Sorry, before I get in trouble.
Thank you, Rob. I should say thank you, infamous Rob Griffin. So everybody thinks that Rob and I, we're both Rob G's. Everybody thinks that Rob wrote my book as well, and I wrote all his columns. So thanks for the.
But I used to get occasionally I'd get a random email from somebody thinking I was that Rob.
Happens all the time. Happens all the time. So thank you, everyone. We'll start by introducing the panel here. We got a great panel today, and I think a great topic. As just the casual geek dinner conversation last night was around the problems of data and analytics and having too much data and not enough insight. That seems to be one of the problems that binds all types of digital media these days. And coincidentally, I was watching MSNBC, or actually CNBC last night, and they were interviewing Yuri Milner, and so they were asking, what is the big thing, the next big thing in digital investment in digital media that he's seeing? And surprisingly, but almost not surprisingly, based on our conversations in the last few days, he said that the big play right now is an analysis of data, actually data firms that don't create more data, but actually create insight. And this is where he's putting a lot of his investments in. So this topic, again, I think is relevant to everyone, no matter what you do in digital media. There is data being produced and not enough business intelligence. So with that, I want to introduce the group here. We have Larry Kim, and what I'll do is I'll introduce their names, and we'll go down the row, and we'll talk about a question, a particular thing, and then and they can talk more about what they do. So we have Larry Kim, founder and CTO of WordStream. We have Steve Rowe, the Chief Revenue Officer of MyCityWay, Frost Prioleau, the CEO of Simpli.fi. We have Will Uppington, the Head of Product Development at BloomReach, and Dave Zinman, the CEO of Infolinks. So thank you all for being here today. So to kick this off, again, we'll go down the row here and we'll talk a little bit about what you do at your company and what your company does, to give everyone the context of what we're talking about here and your perspective on data. And then let's talk a little bit about what are your key KPIs that you recommend to clients or even use to measure your own company in terms of whether it's social or content, SEO, paid or natural, social, etc. So.
Hey guys, my name's Larry. I'm with WordStream. I founded the company. So I'm going to be talking today about kind of my experiences in terms of like we provide paid search management software, so we've got like thousands of clients and a lot of data there, insights to share with you. I also have some experiences in that I run the SEO for WordStream.com, and it does like millions of visitors to the blog every month. So I'm going to be sharing some SEO and social stuff. In terms of like the KPIs that my business focuses on, it's at a high level, it's the rate of growth of leads. So we grow our business by doing lead gen, and so basically we're shooting for like a 7 or 8 or 9% monthly compound growth rate for the number of leads that we generate per month.
Hi, Steve Rowe with MyCityWay. We are a city guide mobile app, so everything we do starts with mobile, and now we actually are going backward toward mobile web and web. Our key metric is, sorry, I should take a step back. So our B2C platform has been out a few years, and now we've really gone toward the enterprise platform because the systems that we built on the back end for mobile for our own analysis has really rung true with some of the partners we're working with, BMW, who's one of our investors, Macy's, and some of these other clients that we're working with, to essentially share what we've been trying to optimize on the back end and how we judge and communicate with our clients. And we actually are now considering taking that product to market actually as an analytics and predictive analytics tool. Our founders, Puneet, Mehta, who I am not, is a Wall Street banking technology folks. So they were doing algorithmic trading on Wall Street, and that's about as much as I can tell you about what that means. But essentially it's a lot of analysis, and they're almost getting back to their root of what it's all about. Our key, and I'll work backwards, our key metric that we work on is how personalized we can get each individual how much we can learn about them on a very personal level as they're using our platform. So we've got all sorts of content categories and ways to customize the experience, and then a learning engine that after active customization turns into passive learning, and we start pushing things toward them that would be more relevant to them based on time, location, and all the other situational awareness pieces that we can come up with. And so we're trying to really get to that highly personalized level, and that starts with getting them to first use the apps, and then further customize the apps, and then how often are they going into all the different content categories and what's important to them, and then we start creating some cohorts and pushing information their way and seeing how they react to it, and then continuing to optimize the experience. So theoretically, over time, my experience with the app should be very different than yours. And so that's really our key metric, is how personal we can get that information to them.
All right, I'm Frost Prioleau. I'm CEO of Simpli.fi. We're a demand-side platform. Basically, for those of you who don't know what that is a bidding platform for display media. One of the things that we do a little differently than others is, instead of focusing and targeting against fixed audience segments, we target against unstructured data. So it's a lot more like search in a lot of ways, where you're targeting against individual keywords. We do a lot of search retargeting as one of the sort of targeting techniques we use. So the KPIs that we focus on are essentially our clients' KPIs, and they're buying display primarily to drive some sort of CPA metric, a cost per action, whether that's a sale, a lead form, or something else. Although we still have a lot of clients who want to optimize against CTR, perhaps much to our chagrin, because we don't think that's the best way to go, but we still have a lot of people looking to do that.
Hi, my name is Will Uppington. I'm head product for BloomReach. BloomReach is a platform that helps our customers present the most relevant content to the right users across marketing channels. So we have a product in organic search that helps create landing pages and optimize landing pages for organic search. We have a product in mobile that does something similar for mobile, and working on products in all different marketing channels. I think from a metrics perspective, we're focused when people come to the site, and based on the information when people come to the site, who's the type of people you want to bring to the site. Typically, when you're looking at people coming into the site, people obviously use metrics like conversion rate, things like revenue per visit. One of the areas where we have been focused is, what are the kind of metrics you use in the tail? The conversion rate metric is not a particularly useful metric if you get 20 visits per year, because average conversion rate's 1% to 2%. You just don't have enough data to really make a decision about that. And so we believe that there's a whole new set of metrics that are required as people focus more on the tail and see greater opportunities in the tail, where you really break down and understand what is the likelihood of the user experience. All these metrics like conversion rate are really proxies for that. So as you have less data, start to use things more like bounce rate or page views, even less data, you can actually look at the inherent quality of the page relative to the user intent of the person who's coming to that page. And that data can allow you to, those metrics can allow you to make judgments even before you've got traffic to a page, even when you have small amount of traffic to a page. And so we think that user intent and quality metrics about the content that you have are really a next wave of analytics, and that's something that certainly needs big data in order to go and understand those metrics, not only to calculate those metrics, but also to understand what they mean. When we look at some of our customer sites, bounce rate is an obvious metric, but if you look at the correlation between bounce rate and conversion rate, you'll find, we did a test on one of our customers, and really the bounce rate, if the bounce rate was between 60 and 80%, it didn't really have a big impact on conversion rate. But once it dropped below 60%, the correlation to conversion rate was way, way greater. So every 10 points drop was a much bigger increase in conversion rate. So those are the kind of metrics we think are kind of the next generation, as people have really tapped out a lot of the head demand, and tail is one where automation and big data can really help people do a better job of optimizing.
Interesting. Hi. I'm Dave Zinman. I run Infolinks. Been in the business in digital advertising since '95, and mostly in display advertising. Infolinks is a platform for publishers and advertisers to basically leverage search intent, contextual information to drive much higher performance in advertising. And I was listening to Frost in his statement that chagrined when clients look at CTR as a key metric. And it's an interesting point. A lot of people in display advertising are chagrined when advertisers look at CTR because the honest truth is CTR is pathetic in display. I mean, it's funny. It's a metric that's clearly an interim measure, right? I mean, obviously, we don't care about whether somebody clicks. We care about whether they purchase, they perform some action later on. But the reality is, if your click-through rate average in the industry is 0.08%, you don't want anybody buying media looking at that metric. And even if you have great user data, that you may double, triple that metric, it's still a pathetic metric. And it says something about the state of the industry, the state of display, that the average response to an ad is 0.08%. When we deal in search, obviously we know that that kind of response rate says that your ad doesn't get run at all, basically disappears from the planet. And that doesn't happen in display because we've come to settle for a situation that's basically intolerable, but it's become the new normal, which is that people don't respond to ads. So I hope we get a chance to talk about metrics later on and how we can drive better response rates in display, because right now we're so deep in the weeds of user data and using our understanding of what users were interested in the past to target ads today, that we've come to accept the standards for performance today are so pathetic.
Great.
Damn it.
So another topic that came up yesterday in dinner, as well as we have so many crossover points in media now. We have social that's overlapping into search. We have the influence of content, obviously, driving to conversion. We've got media that go one from the next, one from device to type of content. So if we could you guys shed some insight on how you can take insights from one of these areas and show how it influences another area, or how you combine the data sets to provide additional insight? Larry, you want to?
Sure. One of the most effective ways that we're leveraging two different channels to greater effect is the relationship between content marketing and SEO and remarketing and display advertising. So we drive content marketing like blogging and SEO and all this stuff to create the audiences, which we then remarket to. And so what we're finding is this is like a really effective way of, to the point where we're shifting more than 50% of our budget, or of our paid search budget, towards kind of the paid search remarketing as opposed to just search marketing, because it generates better conversions.
Great. So you could potentially see and show also, maybe if one of your clients is investing in content, what you're getting specifically from conversions, but also from search as well, and mixing those.
Yeah, the average conversion rate is like mid-single digits, and so if someone's already doing content marketing, then this is using these two together is a great way to do conversion rate optimization.
Great. We can go down the line, or anybody can jump in at this point.
You want to jump in next?
Oh, I actually had a comment back to Dave on click-through rates. That's right. So the point on click-through rates is we don't care about click-through rates being low. Actually, last I checked, click-through rates on display are better than billboards and TV and magazines and things like that. So I'm not too worried.
Low bar.
But I'm not too worried about that. No, it's just the point is optimizing to the wrong thing. So whether it's a click-through rate or a cost per click, especially in the world of exchange-traded display, there's a whole variety of issues out there with respect to optimizing on a click.
Yeah, and I could see in Larry's point about, that was Larry, right? Larry's point about basically taking the data that's gold, the data that is the pure intent data, which is somebody coming through a search, and then retargeting them later will improve the performance of display advertising, because display, the bar is so low that you can do better if you target people who were searching before, search retargeting. The thing I challenge, though, is that if you knew what people were interested in at the time you were serving the display ad and what they were interested in at that moment, you do much better than you would targeting what they were interested in when they were on your site before. So it's a lot harder to do, because when you use exchanges, you tend to focus in on the user data segments, which is like, you know, if you look at signal to noise ratio, user segments have a lot of noise. Meaning there's a lot of error in the segments. There's a lot of ancient data, meaning data about somebody who was in market last week, they're not in market now. And most importantly, as I said before, those user segments tend to, in every single case, focus on what people were interested in. So they may still be in market, but they're in the midst of doing something else. And there's a good example would be, like a real world example would be, you walk into an auto showroom, and the guy in the showroom comes up to you and starts telling you about the car. That is real-time targeting, real-time intent. You're interested in it, that's why you're in the showroom. Later that day, you're watching your kid's soccer game, you still happen to be in market for a car, but if that guy showed up again and started talking to you about the car, you'd say, back off, buddy, I'm watching my kid's soccer game. You're not in the same mindset that you were in earlier in the day when you went to the showroom. And that is in essence what we're doing every time we're serving display ads through an exchange, targeting user data. We're targeting what people were interested in before. And that's why the performance is so low. And the click-through rate, while I completely agree you don't optimize to a click-through rate tells you something about whether your ads are engaging or not. And if nobody is clicking, it means nobody wants what you're selling. And so we really need to focus in on what can we do to dramatically improve the performance of display, make it look a little bit more like search by real-time targeting what people are interested in right now.
Yeah, so we do a lot of search retargeting, and we actually can track on our platform the ability to, or the time of the search, right? So people who searched on Lexus SUV 15 minutes ago versus 15 hours ago versus 15 days ago. And yeah, absolutely, click-through rates in the first hour are typically 50% higher than click-through rates further. And it varies by vertical. Life insurance may be a longer thing. Emergency plumber, you know, you want to get them in the first 5 minutes because they're going to go away pretty quick. But recency is a huge part of targeting, search retargeting for sure.
And so it sounds like, again, this isn't an either-or proposition. We're not just taking the data to inform future buys, but we're also using the data to work with that. So when that person, you talk about serving the ad to the person, personalizing based on what they're likely to want at the time, that requires the previous data, but then you're taking, again, that data, and it's a constant churning and learning. So it's, again, this is about taking that, both sides of that equation. So, did you want to add? Well,
you know, and the question of taking data from different sources and putting it together, that's certainly something, you know, my comment on the tail is super valuable in that regard, because you just don't have a lot of data. And I'd imagine, you know, when you're doing display and you've got really low click-through rates, how do you know whether your landing page after you click on a display ad is any good? You have no data really with that low click-through rate to understand that. So we look at a few different things. One is you can sense the inherent, you know, one is quality metrics of that page related to intent, but the other is go look at the rest of the data across your site about what is the quality of that page in general. You know, you can take, if you don't have conversion rate data for a particular channel, go use that for other channels. Even people, you can, by looking at your data in terms of, in effect, the on-site conversion rate or bounce rate, page views, engagement on the site, you can build up a set of metrics about the inherent, how good that page is in general. And you can use that as a factor. You know, obviously, there are certain channels that make this a lot easier. You know, paid and SEO, obviously, you can go look at all the data on SEO and paid and start understanding conversion rates. You have to make a lot of adjustments because organic search rates are always going to be lower, partially because of just the nature of paid search. But there's a tremendous amount that can be done, and I think that is where having systems to go analyze this data is really essential, because you've got to be able to do that outside of each analytics system that may be focused on each particular channel.
So, Dave, you mentioned real-time data, and a lot of marketers measure their data, or at least they get their reporting on a weekly, monthly, sometimes even longer basis. They're optimizing for history. So, how important is it to get this, be on top of your reporting, be on top of the data? Is it a day-to-day thing? Is it an hour-to-hour thing for really real-time, or is it okay to go week-to-week?
Yeah, I think when I refer to real time, I'm talking about the runtime in the system that's making decisions around serving ads. Marketers, even if you could get data every hour, you wouldn't really want to. There's too much of it. So I can understand why you're going to do periodic deep dives to change direction and change course. But when you're actually in the moment, when the system is in the moment of deciding, okay, we have a web page, I have the opportunity to serve an ad on that page, what's the best decision I can make? And so when I'm arguing for real-time intent, it's really arguing to understand what's the context of the page the person is on right now. Yes, they may have been previously to a whole raft of advertiser websites. There may be a bunch of first-party data available. There may be a trail of where they've been the last month. But what are they doing right now? Why did they come to the page that they're on right now, and what are they doing right now? And if you understand that real-time intent, you're going to generate much higher. I mean, we're talking 30, 40 times the level of engagement you would standard get with a display advertisement.
Gotcha. And so, Larry, maybe I ask this question to you then as well. Based on how is important, we sort of have in content marketing and social, we have a long history of keywords, right? We know what everybody's going to search from, year to year, the real common things, LCD TVs, LED TVs, but then there may be something more specific or seasonal about it. So how important is it from what you see in terms of keyword research and the new types of keywords that are coming up to provide current reporting or current data, fresher data? Do you have any clients that are leveraging keyword research for social and the way they're talking to their audience?
So that's a pretty challenging question. I think for the most part, the clients that we work with aren't leveraging very sophisticated strategies to try to anticipate future hit terms. I think the vast majority of their kind of like if you run a top keywords report on them from last week versus this week, they tend to be kind of similar.
Kind of similar from week to week. So they tend to focus on the historical.
Well, you kind of go with it's just hard. It's like a hard question to kind of predict what terms are going to be popular that haven't been searched on yet. It's just it's a little bit beyond some of the capabilities.
Understood. So can you talk a little bit about how you differentiate paid social versus organic social in terms of reporting and key performance indicators? So
we don't have any KPIs for paid social. This has nothing to do with like stupidity or whatever. We've tried everything. We've tried cost per conversion. We've tried every possible standard metric, and we're just not able to get those to work correctly. So we've kind of taken, paid social KPIs. We think of it in terms of just branding, but we don't subscribe to branding, like this concept of branding. So I basically don't have a KPI to share with paid social. For organic social, it's all about just the engagement, the reshares, that kind of retweets. It's all about that kind of engagement, social engagement.
Understood. Yeah, you almost have to look at it as kind of a branding or kind of a broader type of metric where you're not applying specific ROI. Did you want to add something to that?
Well, on the recency point, I think to Larry, I agree with Larry on the intent side. It's pretty hard to react very quickly to that. I think there'll be over time ways we can do that, but one of the, I think, relatively untapped areas is what is actually happening on your site, especially if you're like a retailer who has fairly frequent inventory. So I just wonder around the room, how many people take into account the inventory changes that make on the site in their, in their paid search or, marketing efforts? Okay, a few. So the, if you have a situation where let's say somebody is searching for, we use this example a lot, but red cardigan sweaters, and one day you have 10 of those, and then the next day you have 0 of those. That kind of recency information, I think, would be very valuable to have, in marketing, because last week, hey, we were seeing great results sending this red cardigan sweater traffic to this page, and now you're not going to get very good results if you have just a bunch of red sweaters and no cardigans on there. So I think that kind of understanding, I think on marketing, we oftentimes spend a lot of time on the targeting aspects, getting the right people to show up at the site. There's an opportunity to, I think, better understand and more real-time react to what's happening on your site, especially if you're a very large company, and being able to do that at scale seems to me a valuable thing to do.
So Dave, you asked earlier about metrics. You talk about some of the key metrics you look at and recommend for the people you work with?
Yeah, and actually it ties into a thread that's come up here a few times. So we've all mentioned in some way, shape, or form the search traffic. So people coming from, whether it's paid or organic, to your site, and how valuable that data set is. I think we're dealing with, as a key metric, understanding that data in detail is critical. But we're all dealing with in a world where that data set is being obfuscated in some way, shape, or form by, whether it's by Google or whether it's by new browser versions that are starting to limit the ability of the publisher or the advertiser to see that data. And at least with us, we've spent a lot of time trying to understand how can we fill in the blanks, if you will. When somebody comes, you can see they're coming from Google, but you can't see what they searched on. It's interesting, though, that there are some patterns in that data, and that data is so important, it's useful often to try to predict what that term was that the person was searching on. And so there are a lot of methods to do that kind of prediction, where we've filed some patents on that particular thing. But what we've learned is that you can predict that in many cases, and if you have a certain level of accuracy, you can predict it. And the difference in your business and having that data more clear is it's enabling you to better understand the intent of the audience coming to your site, which, how valuable is that? That's basically fundamental to serving up what your audience is interested in. So taking that search data, understanding why someone is coming through, and why they're coming to your site, and what their intent is at that moment is fundamental to driving against all the key metrics that you end up measuring on the back end, which is conversion rate and the response rates to various pages and the flow through the site, and all of that is, can stem back to, well, why is someone showing up here in the first place? We tend to think of that data in a very valuable way, but we don't spend much time trying to analyze it in depth. And so that's why I loved your example. It's a perfect example. It really drives home how important it is to understand that data.
Good point. We don't spend as much time analyzing the data. I think that's a critical point. It reminds me of Avinash Kashik's 1090 rule. So those of you who may know of Avinash, he's spoken here before, but he says that you should invest 10% in data and tools and 90% in the people to analyze that data. So how many people are doing that? 10% budget on analytics and 90% on the people to turn that down. No hands. So probably something we can work towards. Definitely the human element is very important.
Rob,
yes.
So to me, one of the things, search marketing, you talked about cross data, cross media. So other thing we see all the time is search marketers have a ton of great data on search terms. That data, the keyword data, can be put to work very effectively now in display by search retargeting. It can also be put very effectively to work targeting against FBX. So to the extent you consider FBX social, the same people who are coming to your site who have searched on, or who are searching on keywords for you that are not coming to your site, you can target them all across the world of exchanges on display. You can also target them on social, and you can do such a way, in Facebook, you can do such in a way where you can only target the people who have searched in the last, to Dave's point, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever the right mix between reach and performances for you. So there's a lot, I think it's really untapped. A lot of search marketers know it. A lot of times there's issues in different silos where search marketers don't manage their display budget, so there's data's stuck in different silos in different agencies and different parts of the company. It's a great opportunity that a lot of search marketers, I think, are not, are not taking full advantage of.
I agree with that. I think, you've got, it's a linguistic cue. We often think about keywords as a topical interest, but it's actually a linguistic cue towards the interest of that user. And I think there's a lot, to your point, there's a lot of ways that can develop for better targeting and better use towards conversion.
Yeah, and I think on both of those last 2 points, there's the intent of why they're showing up at the site, which is hugely important. And I think it's also, once that person gets there, you think, why are they there? But then who that person is. And especially in mobile, I think we have the ability to get to the root of a bit more about that individual. And mobile is a constant second screen. Whether you're watching TV with a tablet, or you're out and about, you're enjoying an event, you're working sometimes, and you're on it, and you can glean a lot of information on when people are using mobile, what are the things that they're going to, what are their interests. And one thing we've done with, for example, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, you've got 50 million people on television, you've got 4 million people on the street. They didn't have a second screen app. So what we did is we built with Macy's an app that connected. Your first choice in the tree was, are you watching it on the street, which is a very different experience, of course, in New York, or are you watching it at home, is sort of maybe half watching and half cooking the turkey. So those experiences were very different, but they both had real engagement to them. There was an ability to elf yourself and make yourself a balloon in the parade. So there was some augmented reality pieces in there that worked really well and created a lot of engagement. And then what they were doing with the beauty of the Elf Yourself was people wanted to share it. So then it became, you've got an in-person event, you've got a TV audience, you've got an app running, and then you're connecting to social. So when they made that connection to social, suddenly they were learning much more about the individual because you had to connect to Facebook, and suddenly they start learning your interest graph and how influential you are. And then you start getting into, I think, a really key metric, which is referrals, which is the next step from engagement. You've got that person now engaged. How influential is that individual? How many Facebook friends do they have? Are their friends influential? Can you connect those dots? And that's where we're all kind of trying to go, which is, can you connect those dots that they might not be an influential person, like me, frankly. I don't have a lot of followers. I follow a lot, but I don't talk a lot on social. But I've got a lot of people that talk a lot that are my friends, and they're bloggers, they're mommy bloggers, and they're reporters, and they're these kind of people. So engaging with me is a good idea to get to the rest of those people because I'm sharing it through that network. So it's really hyper targeting by personalization is where we're trying to go. And I think you can do that especially through mobile because it's such a personal device. People are doing all sorts of things on it on a daily basis, and you can really learn more and more. And then every message you send to them over time as you're watching it becomes more and more personalized based on what they're reacting to.
Again, you mentioned personalization being the metric, so deeper personalization means higher capacity, propensity to convert to whatever the specific action is. What are some of the specific actions that personalization leads you to?
I think it comes down to especially the advertising. So if an advertiser wants to, is working with us, or a brand is trying to figure out with us, like BMW or the Daily News, we power their core news app. They're trying to figure out for their advertisers who are what are the cohort buckets in there, so that they can then serve up the right ad at the right time, which isn't just about click-through rate for the advertiser. It's also about higher usage because people, obviously are less annoyed when they're just looking for news or looking for something through the City Guide. And so they've built in our whole City Guide into their news app as a layer. So now they learn more than just what kind of news they're interested in, which tells you a lot about the individual. You also have the whole City Guide where these are people that go out constantly because they're always looking at dining at 8 o'clock at night. They're going to concerts. They're doing those kinds of things. So they're creating a whole interest graph around every one of their users, and then they can start serving up ads that are most appropriate at the right time and right place.
So this is getting beyond looking at data as data and true intelligence. You're learning intelligence about the person in order to make a more informed ad delivery, to put them a better message, which will ultimately lead to a better action and a better connection. So
Right. You know,
yeah.
we think it's much more about foresight than insight, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of the next step of where we're trying to go to, so that you know before you test it, you can estimate what that reaction is going to be a lot earlier in the process.
All right, I think that's, if you take away one point from this whole session, ideally that whatever it is you're doing, that you're constantly putting your data together, making it inform the next iteration of your marketing efforts. Make it smarter is what you're always working towards. And I think, again, the panelists have explained that and expressed that very well. So we'll go ahead and move on to, do we have any questions at this time for the panelists? Anything we've talked about, any questions you have in your own dealings and workings on the analytics side across the organization? Any hands at all? Okay.
Anyone?
I got another question. Anyone? While you're thinking about your questions, I've got another question for you guys. So we've talked about the right metrics to look at. What are some of the wrong, we've talked about CTR, is it a good metric or not? What are some other metrics that you see marketers focus on that maybe they're chasing a ghost a little bit too much? They tend to derail your efforts. They get hyper-focused on, is it a trophy pet ranking, or in SEO? Are there certain things that maybe some certain people like other than others, and it tends to steer the organization? What are some of the wrong metrics that marketers get focused on that takes them away from true business intelligence? Dave, you got any ideas on this?
Yeah, there are.
CTR?
Yeah, I won't go back to CTR. I think we killed that horse.
Yeah.
When you look at how marketers are evolving their metrics of measurement today, there's a lot of effort around attribution management. We've talked about that a bit at the conference, and some of those metrics are really useful. Obviously, you want to understand what's the ultimate impact of your advertising spend. You want to know, am I spending X dollars? What kind of return am I getting? And where's the true impact? My concern with a lot of the attribution efforts are that we are bending over backwards to find a way to attribute a certain percentage of a conversion to everything that we do online, and I fundamentally don't believe it. And I think an easy way to disprove that would be for you to do an experiment, which is, let's say if you're doing display, you're doing search, you're doing email, etc., and you have an attribution company measuring the impact of all of those things and trying to weight and determine what percentage credit goes to each of the channels and each of your efforts. Well, you could try turning off one of those channels and see the overall effect. My guess is that if you were able to identify the low engagement channels, meaning the channels where consumers are not responding to the advertising directly, meaning then that's often display, where you don't see people clicking through directly on those display ads a lot, but maybe those people are seeing the ads converted later. If you were to take some of that budget and turn it off, I think what would happen is the attribution company would find a way to reallocate the credit to the other spend that you're doing, and you wouldn't see an impact in terms of your overall conversions. And that's pretty telling if that's the case, because then it means that whatever attribution your algo is deciding goes to display is probably over allocated. And it's simply because, yes, display ads, you are going to hit a lot of people, and you're probably going to happen to hit people who would have converted anyway. And so if you look at your display budget in particular and you say, you know what, I'm spending, let's say, $100,000 a month on display. What if I cut out the bottom 50%, the lowest engagement, where I get the lowest engagement? Do we all believe that that's going to have a big effect on your overall performance? And I'd say no. And so what does that say about attribution then? So I went on a little bit, but it's sort of challenging a fundamental assumption behind attribution management and allocation.
Yeah, I think attribution is a great topic of this, because last click attribution, which everybody uses, I think is an example where you really need to understand what you're measuring. I mean, one metric I would just say out there that doesn't really make any sense, maybe to be a little controversial, but everybody still reports on, is kind of branded paid search, for example. People attribute all these great, conversion rates and metrics to branded paid search. or even branded, organic search. I think it's completely false. The way, and I think a lot of people know this, but they report up and they say, our paid search, return on ad spend is this, and they bring in the branded. Well, with branded, you're not taking into account any cannibalization. If you do tests and turn off branded campaigns, a tremendous amount of that will go to organic search. And they're not taking into account that some other marketing channel, you've already paid for you paid somewhere else for that person to go put in a branded term. And you're not taking that into account when you're evaluating those metrics. And I think a lot of people understand this, but still, maybe in order to get budget and things like that, they'll go and report on return on ad spend and include those metrics. But they're, I think they're just completely false.
I'd say one of the things we see in display is sort of Dave's point. A lot of people will look at a audience segment, and in that segment could be people who've done all kinds of things to put them in that segment, and who've searched on a term or taken some action anywhere in the last 5 minutes, last 5 days, last month, and they say, hey, here's how this segment is performing, which is really a composite view, and so really the ability to get down deeper into that segment and figure out which parts are performing, which recencies are performing, and drive metrics around that, as opposed to just looking at it in bulk. Because there may be segments that aren't performing well, but certain parts of that segment are performing very, very well, just like some search terms perform well, similar ones don't, and being able to drive your budget around that.
Yeah, just to add, part of it is making sure you're looking at the right KPI based on the campaign or the media, and it's going to vary, even with with the consumer apps that we do, for us it's all, time per session. A lot of people might want high, but that doesn't work for us, because time per session for us, and I was at Zagat for 10 years before this, and it was the same thing. Actually, the more we could shrink the time, the time spent per session, the better, as long as obviously we wanted the number of sessions going up, because theoretically they should come in, get the information they want, and then leave. And so that's very different than even the Daily News, which is a very similar app to what we have that we've built for them, which is much more about, they want that time per session to go up so that there's more page views and people are actually browsing and reading it. So, just a surface example, but I think it's really challenging yourself. Are you looking every time at the right KPI versus just saying it's always going to be CTR or it's always going to be some piece of engagement?
I think the biggest challenge here in this metrics discussion, I'm going to take a little contrarian view here. Sure, attribution is an issue. From my vantage point, the biggest challenge is that of analysis paralysis. So what I mean by this is, and maybe this is just my point of view based on the types of businesses that I work with, which are kind of more medium-sized businesses. But what I'm seeing is mostly clients that just get stuck and can't get any shit done because they just can't figure it out. And so I think, just to give you a little data around this, I analyzed a couple $1 billion worth of paid search spend, like AdWords spend, and I was looking into kind of, what are people actually doing in their AdWords accounts? And what I found was, like, in any given month, half of them haven't done anything, like not even one thing, like change one ad text or change one bid. So half of the accounts that I looked at didn't do anything. And it's not just like a problem with kind of just these small Joe the Plumber kind of little mom and pop stores. There were plenty of like agency managed accounts spending millions of dollars per month that were doing absolutely nothing. And so I think, just to put this problem in context, like if you were to just do one thing in your account, just one thing per week, and to consistently do that over a 90-day period, you would actually be ahead in terms of your performance metrics on average, in terms of your correlations and stuff. You'd be ahead of 90% of the AdWords accounts out there. So just based on my vantage point of what I'm seeing, of course attribution is important. Of course click-through rates are, may or may not be important. But I think the challenge is analysis paralysis, and just getting all this complicated data stuff getting in the way of just getting shit done. I love search marketing because, you can try out anything, and you can measure it, and then you can see how it does, and then make incremental optimizations. And there's this like, and you can't do that with like, I don't know, billboard ads. But you know, the challenge I'm seeing is that no one is taking, or it's gotten so complicated with all the analysis that we forgot to do these optimizations. And
hey Larry, can I interrupt you there for a second? Sorry to interrupt the diatribe monologue there, but we're just running over a little bit of time. We have one more question, and I'm going to let Grant go just because he has a dreamy voice and people like hearing him talk. And you guys all answer his question as fast as you can. And Larry, I know that's going to be a struggle, but we'll keep it quick so we don't beat any more dead horses. We don't want any more dead horses around here. It's cruel to animals. And then we're going to close it down and go to roundtables.
All right, so really quick, every single person up there talked about engagement, but beyond just the click-through rate, which is the dead horse we're talking about here, what are the other elements of engagement that you guys look at as far as business intelligence, so engagement metrics? There you go.
Anyone? Ross, Dave?
Yeah, it could be number of pages. I mean, before CPA, I'd say number of pages visited on a site. So one layer deep.
The quick answers. Any others? Any other engagement metrics, branding?
I look at like, so for organic search, it would be like comments on your blog. Like, is it driving shares? Is it driving comments? Is there a lot of time on site? Those are the types of engagement metrics I look at.
We're looking at how many different categories, how many different areas of the app or the mobile site they're actually going into. So how deeply they're going across it, how many things they're interested in that you're offering to them, and then also referral.
Anybody look at off-site branding metrics as far as social, or particularly in social?
Not
Anything
off-site,
particular, likes, shares, extended network reach, those kind of things? Maybe not.
But in the spirit of Larry's point about doing just one thing, if you just cut out the people that bounced right away, that immediately would dramatically change, even if you didn't worry, because I think time spent on site and all those metrics are important and will drive insight. But if you could just eliminate the folks that are just showing up and bouncing away, you dramatically change the performance.
Great, guys. Rob, any parting thoughts for the audience?
I think since we're on time here, we'll wrap it up. Just everyone give a round of applause to the panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. And thanks for all of you who